Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. The Grant.
My name is Niels Tudor Winter, and I'm the creator, editor, and host of The Grant. The Grant is an independent podcast initiative with the ambition to dig into all corners of the EU R&D funding system on topics of interest for the full EU R&D funding community. Digging into the Brussels bubble is an important part of this podcast initiative. Simply, I want to fold out to the community across Europe how different organizations they work within the Brussels ecosystem and fold out why it can be beneficial to be present in Brussels. INESC is a large Portuguese private research organization. It has been present in Brussels for a few years and is quite ambitious in relation to connecting their research teams to the Brussels bloc. Ricardo Migueis is the head of office at the INESC Brussels Hub and is one of these persons that have been in Brussels for ages and know the ins and outs of how to work the city. Of course, I had to take him into the virtual podcast studio for a talk about how INESC is approaching Brussels. And when you put two old Brussels rats together, there's a lot to talk about. In other words, this is a double episode, and in the first half, we are digging into the reasons why they are having a Brussels office, how it functions, and the important connection back home. Please enjoy.
The Grant. Welcome to The Grant, the EU funding podcast. Today, this is a nice one. And the reason for that is that I had an episode with two other podcasters. And today I have another one, a new one on board. We're not going to talk, the main topic of this episode is not the podcast that he's making, but we are going to talk about that because I love it. Before I say anything else, Ricardo, welcome.
Thank you so much, Niels. It's a huge pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for your invitation.
Likewise, I always love to have other podcasters on board that are dealing with the area that we have at our heart here. Now, we're going to talk about your organizations today and how you work from Brussels. But before we fold that out, the basis for this episode, can you shortly introduce yourself and your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, again, thanks for having me. And as I always say, if you love European research and innovation, you need to listen to the Grant podcast. And by the way, the Insider podcast. And if you love European research and innovation and you want to keep a finger on the pulse of innovation in Brussels, you have to be there. You can't really be anywhere else because otherwise you're not close to the action. Mm-hmm. And so that's exactly where I fit in. I head the INESC Brussels Hub, which means I spend a lot of time ensuring that our network of institutes back in Portugal is deeply connected to what's happening here in Brussels at the EU level, especially when it comes to research, innovation policy, and of course funding opportunities. That you have been doing a hugely helpful job in translating into simpler, accessible language and easy to access. So in simple terms, my role is about connecting the dots between European policy making and the innovative work that our institutes are doing back in Portugal. I work to open doors for European research and innovation proposals, but mainly what we do is the representation of the Portuguese science and technology in Brussels, and especially, of course, of the INESC institutes. And so it's a bit like being an ambassador to science and technology in representation of a large organization or large organizations that also have a public mission.
Which is a very important mission and a very important sort of flag to put in Brussels, that function that you have. Now, you might excuse a good handful of my dear listeners for not knowing what kind of organization INESC is. So could you maybe share a little bit about the mother, the headquarters?
Yeah.
So what kind of research organization is that?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's absolutely normal. So INESC stands for Institute for Systems and Computer Engineering originally. It was founded back in the 1980s, and actually in 1980. It has grown into really what I can say a powerhouse of research and innovation with a significant presence both in Portugal and internationally. And today it consists of 5 core institutes. In Lisbon, we have 3 institutes that operate together under the INESC Lisboa umbrella. Then there's INESC Coimbra, and of course INESC Tech in Porto, which is one of the largest. And we also extend beyond Europe with INESC Brazil playing a strategic role in our global network. But we have a huge international dimension, not only towards Europe, but towards the Atlantic, because Portugal is mostly an Atlantic country. So we have very strong ties with partners in the United States and in the American continent as a whole, but also across Asia. We work very closely. We just opened a call for internships between the National Institute of Informatics in Japan and INESC, and so on. So we have more than 45 nationalities working around here. We more than 2,000 people in our team. Around 10% on top of that number is dedicated support staff. And these folks of the support staff are what I call the unsung heroes who handle everything from pre-award to post-award management of research projects to intellectual property, communication, data protection. I don't know, the whole bunch. So we're not just I would say that INESC is not just a research entity or a research powerhouse, which is now internationally recognized in some key areas, but it's a well-oiled machine today that ensures that our work has real world impact.
Very well. Good. Thanks.
You're very welcome.
So the key topic of today is about the office that you have in Brussels, of which you are the director. So we're going to dig a little bit into how you work with that. Earlier, I've had the NTNU office in, and I had the
Massimo.
Exactly, and two for you from Turin. No, wait, Tuscany. Sorry, their office. So I have had these people in for conversation about how they work, but I never get tired of understanding and listening into how research organizations they attack Brussels, because there's always a different angle, different way related to either resources or how if you have had a good idea of how to make the connection and so on and so forth. So I'm looking very much forward to that conversation. So first, Ricardo, the flying. So INESC Hub, when did you establish the Brussels office?
The Brussels office was established in 2019. It was just before the pandemic. Very timely.
But you the director when it was started up?
Oh yes, I was one of the promoters of the idea, and So let me. Actually, it's good that you mentioned NTNU and Turin, or other 2 universities, because that. Let me tell you a little bit more about INESC, because I think that is going to be relevant for a distinction, because not all entities are the same, even though a lot of our challenges are the same or are similar. The work that we do and the way that we do the work, sometimes it's different because of the nature of the entity. And INESC was created to fulfill a mission when some really clever guys that thought after there was the end of the dictatorship in Portugal in 1974, and so soon after that, people that were really well educated, mostly abroad across Europe, but mostly in the United States at the time and the UK, they came back and they thought, we need an interface of universities and industry because we are not doing what we are today calling knowledge valorization. And at the time was just, we need to translate, basic fundamental research into up-to-market solutions. And so that didn't exist. And so that work has earned INESC international recognition since 1980. And this is where we take our deep tech research and convert it into valuable innovations. We cover the whole value chain. So we also do services to industry. We work with IKEA, with Volkswagen, with a lot of different industries. And then we do a lot of fundamental research. We just got an ERC. I just got the news that Marco from INESC Microsystems and Nanotechnologies in Lisbon got an ERC grant just recently, the last few days. So that also influences the way that the nature of our office in relation to other offices, even though, and we can discuss that at the end, but I don't think that's the point today, the office, these type of organizations tend to synergize a lot in the way they address policy making.
Yeah. Learn from each other, right?
Absolutely.
And you take color of each other, because there's a huge interaction in Brussels between you.
Yeah, I mean, we have to. Sometimes we have to, Brussels is a bubble, first of all, and most of the critical information is decided and is circulated in that bubble a long time before it reaches other channels. So that's one of the reasons why we are in Brussels, right? So the office was created not only because of that, but also because at INESC there was an increasing importance of European projects and internationalization. This started playing a major role in our strategy. Mm-hmm. And then for a country like Portugal, with what I call a very specific geographical context, having a presence in Brussels through the INESC Brussels Hub is absolutely critical, because this allows us to participate in the shaping of that EU research and innovation agenda from an early stage, and a much earlier stage than what you can do through even national delegates participating in program committees. And so it's a bit of a strategic outpost, trying to strengthen INESC's visibility, building key partnerships, helping us access funding opportunities in Europe, but also outside Europe, because sometimes people forget when you're in Brussels and you gain visibility, the type of funding opportunities that come to you are not only European. And so this strategy of international outreach just can be reflected in our numbers. We have a turnover that is about 50 million per year, and a variable percentage of that is in EU projects, but it has been growing a lot. So yeah, so in a nutshell, I mean, there are a few other reasons I could expand, but in a nutshell, that's it.
Yeah. So in other words, and this is always the motivation for universities to establish a foothold in Brussels, that's the realization that external funding from EU, it gets more and more important. Not only for the funding itself, but also for the networks it creates. So if you want to be in the hotspot within your research field, it's sort of the European Commission, by pushing the standards and limits of the calls, pushes the strongest ones together, right? So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we I think we forget about how much of the importance of participating in the European arena is not just the funding, and only more mature organizations that acknowledge that have some stability in getting that vision translated into their strategy, and also that have the dimension to do it. Because of course that if we were very little, we wouldn't have the capacity. This is not a cheap endeavor. right? This is an expensive endeavor. So we need to have that capacity. By the way, one of our motivations is that Portugal is sadly one of the, if not the only country in Europe that does not have a representation in IGLO, for example, through a dedicated formal public science and technology office. That would not substitute an institutional representation, because those are different things. But it was part of our motivation at the beginning. Yeah,
would make it stronger. Yeah.
Yeah, it made it stronger.
That's what the others do. At least the ones I know, there's an interplay between the organization, like the IGLO, the program committee members, and then the individual officers of universities. Because you have to attack it from more sides. The strategic part of the lobbying that we're going to talk about a little later. You're not just if it's one person representing one corner, you can only do so much.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah, no, and that's so true, and that makes our life and our office and mission very, very challenging. So in terms of how we go about strategizing our activity.
That's also very interesting, Ricardo.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't interesting. Trust me.
No, it's very nice. Thanks. Let's move on to talk a little bit about the practical organization and so on. So that's just to setting the scene. So you have the university, 2,000 people, campus in Portugal.
It's not a university; it's a research performing organization or a research and technology organization.
It's a private research organization.
Yes, because that's a curiosity that most of Europe doesn't know. But I can't say for sure today, but a few years ago I did a study with colleagues at Research Council, and I think that it was about 85% of the research entities in Portugal are of private non-profit nature, because that was the way that it was structured when the system started to be restructured mainly in the 80s and then heavily in the 90s with the creation of our first Ministry for Science in 97, first Secretary of State in 95 and first Ministry in 97. So you see, it's a very young system. So
it's a little bit like Spain.
Spain
also have a lot of private research institutes. No?
They do indeed. Yeah. And very dynamic ones. We work a lot with Technalia and a lot of other ones. Yeah.
Parallel history with dictatorships and so on. So no.
Yeah. And history matters, as we all know.
Indeed. So how many people are in Brussels?
So our office is designed to cover a broad spectrum of activities, but a very agile team is needed. So the number of people is between 1 and 3 in Brussels.
I understand.
Because then this is a multifaceted team, very, very agile, as I said. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of our core strengths. But because we handle everything from policy analysis to communication to project facilitation, networking, direct engagement with EU bodies and stakeholders. But what we do is that we have a very structured approach to the relation and a huge support from our institutes back home. So we do not overlap, or we do not take over the job. On the contrary, we complement the institutes back home, the teams in pre-award, the teams in post-award, the teams in commercialization of technology, etc., etc. So there is this complementarity that makes the team very, very, very big, because at one point you're not working with the 3 people in your office. You're working with the you with thousands of people, maybe some hundreds at least of people across the whole of the different institutes.
So it's so you're as naturally, I was going to get back to that, but as natural as possible, you step into a collaboration ad hoc, so to say, where need be, with the team or teams from Portugal.
It's not ad hoc at all, actually. It's very so. What I try to have approved by our. So let me explain how it works in very direct way, so that it's easier to understand. Mm-hmm. So each institute has a representation in what we call the management committee by the president directly of that institute, and that management committee that provides the orientations and the strategic orientations, and we have a strategic plan that is revised every 3 years. Now, in that strategic plan, we have specific areas of action that are deepened with specific annual activities plan. Then we have the structures that we have created, which are based on, first, the strategic areas and transversal areas of intervention, which are at the level of the management committee and what we call the policy board or policy and operations board, which I also call them the chiefs of staff of the presidents. They kind of facilitate and make it easier and more fluid, the decision making on a day-to-day basis. And then you have the thematic areas. And in the thematic areas, we have started, this has been a learning process as well. We have started with the thematic work groups. We are moving more and more towards having what I call the thematic delegate.
Yeah.
And then that thematic delegate will be responsible for having a dynamic, very heavy presence and understanding of the European policies, European funding opportunities, and depending on the area, it can be partnerships, it can be ERC or EIC, or it can be beyond that. And we have a very close relationship. And then he's the number 8 on the team. He has to distribute game to the other people in the institution. That has 2 goals, which is to create a capacity building process with the people that are in Portugal, that to engage them in a constant basis in EU consultations, in EU affairs in general, enlarging also the number of people that are usually involved in making proposals, for example, because we have to be honest, in any organization, you have people that are very, very, very successful, and then that's a handful of people, and then you have a very big number of people that some have tried, or and then they weren't successful. The success rates in new projects are not very high, so they kind of think we're losing our time. And then you have the young people that need to be engaged in that and learn from the beginning, and this is a process that we're starting to structure. But having said that, our thematic priorities are based on on consultations and on the definition by the management committee. So we don't necessarily bet all our resources of the hub on the stronger areas of our action, because those are the ones that need less help. Sometimes we have some focus for some time in areas that we know have a huge potential, are growing, and can achieve as good results or even surpass the areas with most success nationally and internationally. I'll give you an example. We are extremely successful in the energy area across several institutes. We are internationally recognized. We've led the largest energy research and innovation action in Horizon 2020, and But then on the other hand, we have a very, very successful team that applies digital technologies to health in several ways. Mm-hmm. And they even have very successful spin-offs already and startups that some of them are. But they are not at the European integration level that the energy guys are. So, we try to also learn from each other and support those areas, focusing our action in those areas where most support is needed.
How to do that? Do you have some sort of structure for body solution? I don't know. Do you have some sort of structure for like sharing experience, how to approach this?
In what? Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly.
You have the experienced ones that are strong in this and have been doing it for years and don't have a problem acquiring external funding, and then you have the lesser experienced ones that could need a hand.
I mean, there's a lot of it really depends on what we're talking about. There are areas where you need. Sometimes researchers come to you and say, I really think that we can and we need to increase our capacity in European projects. And I say, okay, so this is a process, and to be able to do that, tell me, what are your priorities? What do you do? Like, not you personally, but the health area of your institute, for example, or the C or robotics or whatever area, right? So there's a thematic area in your institutes, and you see, what are your priorities? And in the majority of the cases, they are not capable of responding. They are capable of saying, yeah, we've done some work in this and that. There was a really good project approved on that area, but there's no structured response to that. So instead of doing the ad hoc identification of the needs, if you are at that maturity level, you need to start by a characterization, a very deep characterization that is validated by that area, by the people that work in that area. And when that validation is done, then the step to create that and to bridge that into a strategy that both at institutional level and at European level is made much easier, because then that can be framed within our internal strategy at the hub, which we call sensing and seizing. So the hub plays the role of sensing, so identifying, understanding opportunities, priorities, detecting emerging trends that are relevant for our institutes. And then the institute themselves, or the team or the specific team in that institute, has the role of seizing the opportunity. So they are the ones that take the opportunities, that develop the proposals, that ultimately execute projects, or that ultimately are the guys that can, with a lot of quality and technical capacity, respond to specific areas of public consultations or integrate high-level or expert groups in that specific thematic or knowledge area. So that really depends on the maturity level, to go back to your question, and so the process can start with a characterization, can go into a matchmaking of that characterization with European funding and trends, but it has to have, this is a key part, a feedback loop into the organization, where the organization or that team of people will have to say, okay, so how much do we want to be aligned, and where do we fit, and how can we contribute into this priority area at European level? And are we going to mobilize all our PhDs and postdocs to work in this area, or are we going to leave them a more open approach to research? And are we going to this has an impact across the institution, because some of those decisions might mean, okay, so there are people that are not being mobilized with a thematic focus, they are left with a more open field in front of them, but they need career and HR support so that we understand if they are, for example, people that can be prepared across the years to be a successful ERC candidate, or if they are just very good at doing collaborative research, or if they are very good at doing more commercialization. And because we cover the whole research and innovation value chain, let's put it that way, we need to juggle all those balls.
Now, how do you? Because that's a lot. For a small office of 1 to 3 employees, and when it's one, it's just you. when you're so lucky to have a little bit more on board, it's easier. But how do you structure that strategy? So you have your connections, you have the management board, so to say, from different institutes that's gathered. So there's a structure of communication there. Are you prioritizing your approach to lobbying, for instance, towards the work programs? How do you structure your strategy? Small, few resources, structure how to channel the input to seize the opportunities, picking them up, sending them back. How much involved yet? Because when I hear you say we seize them and then, or you pick it up and then somebody needs to run after that. But who's motivating it if they're a little slow back home? Are you also doing that, or do you have little ambassadors to push back home in Portugal? Of how does that work?
Now, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head, as we usually say, and I know that sounds like a lot of moving parts, but let me. It's very simple indeed. The way it works is the following: you sense the opportunity, you open the opportunity, and you try to do it with a focus in the strategic areas of that are related to your institutions, of course. Back home, and then the importance of the communication channels back and forth between the representation office in Brussels and the entities back home. And those communication channels are the groups. I ended up not saying all the groups. So there's the management committee, the policy operations board, the work group communications. There's a transversal funding task force, and then we have specific task forces that we create depending on the willingness of seizing an opportunity. So if it is an opportunity that one person can seize, and it's a researcher and he's willing to do it, that one is solved. But some of those opportunities that we want to seize, they take 2 years to seize, right? Or more. It's a process. One day these guys from a not so mature part of our organization came up to me and said, we need to grow our capacity into integrate that research infrastructure or public-private partnership. That happened to me in both cases. I mean, the work starts at home. So you start working with them, and that work is a project, and that project needs resources. So needs allocation of time, of people from that institute. Otherwise, we would have to hire a team of 100 in Brussels. Right? Yeah. So needs allocation of time, of people, from those institutes, and needs specific goals, concrete goals, milestones, and resources and financial resources if needed, which are usually needed, but sometimes can be translated into just human resources or the provision of infrastructure services, etc. So that's how it works. You sense, you identify, you discuss the strategic importance, and then, and sometimes I have to make clear that is what I am identifying is an opportunity because it's not immediately clear for some people, right? So that's part of the core job. But then the implementation is like it has to have like a very professional project management approach. Mm-hmm. You need to say, okay, so let's do this. So this is a project, and my intervention is in the design of that project, and then in co-implementing in most of the times in an advisory way than in a hands-on way, because things grow and people need to have ownership of them. That's what we're here for.
Now, we are actually moving a little bit into the connection home block that we have next. So what I'm just going to shortly round this function and organization up. So saying that, so this is sort of framed now, the office and the functions. But the key elements, I guess, if you want to put it in bullets, so that's you want, so influencing, so having an influence on work program content. Then the networks that would open up opportunities for your research teams. And then do you also do concrete proposal facilitation, so to say? Do you help your research teams into proposals, concrete proposals?
So let me add to that question a little bit, if you allow me.
Sure.
Our influence starts at a more abstract level. It doesn't start and end with work programs. Work programs are the end point, mm-hmm. right? So, for example, you have all this AI craze, right? And one of the CEOs of our institutions started thinking, what are institutions around Europe doing? Leaderships of research and innovation institutions doing for thinking what will be the impact and how are we going to lead with this impact. I need to benchmark this. I need to also understand if there are going to be actions within the European programs and instruments where we can work this together. Mm-hmm. So we approached the European Commission. We organized an event with the relevant people from the European Commission and from across the best institutes across Europe that are working and are advanced in this area, in a per invitation only event that was co-organized. In this case, it was co-organized with a Polish representation, and it was a success, and it was. And that is also influencing. That is also capacity building, right? And it's at that abstraction level that it starts, right? It goes into the work program at later stages. Okay.
Yeah.
In relation to proposal supporting, as I said, we do not work directly in proposal building for the thematic areas of the institutes because we do not have the resources for that.
It's pre.
Each of the institutes have those resources, and what I'm working on at the moment with each of those institutes is that is in the articulation of those resources better, in also the synergizing of those resources better, because we have a saying: 95% of the solutions that are asked for, either by industry or even in research programs, they already exist. We just don't know where. So we need to synergize. We need more multidisciplinarity. We need better organization between these structures. So that's another part of the work. But in terms of participation in projects and elaborating proposals, we do participate in projects and elaborate proposals, but it's mostly in what I call the strategic projects. So those are projects that are strategic to work in areas that are contributing to the development of concrete policies or initiatives that align with the activity of our institutes. So we participate in projects in that are helping the European Commission developing their instruments in the future instruments in research infrastructures, technology infrastructures, in regional innovation valleys and digital innovation hubs and era hubs and so on and so forth, right? Yeah. So these kind of transversal areas, open access, right? All those kind of transversal areas.
That's actually a difference from the other research offices that I've had in, because they don't participate in EU funded projects themselves. They facilitate to the So that's a difference there.
Yeah, but the issue is if this started from the following. I started looking at the numbers and I started looking at the typology of projects, and we have huge numbers and huge success rates, and we cannot complain about that. But then I started looking at the typology of projects, and I saw, like one CSA and 137 RIAs. Right, or innovation actions or whatever. So I'm like, okay, guys. So no tenders, no CSAs. This was years ago, right? These are some of the main instruments that the Commission and other European institutions use to actually build their knowledge. Or do you think that they are God, all-knowing beings that sit there in the offices and then write work programs just from that? No, The conclusions of the RIAs and the innovation actions are important. The participation in expert groups are important. The tenders and the CSAs that they fund along the way are hugely important. And it's with that breadth of knowledge that they build the first work programs that then they are sent to first validation to the program committees. But when they get to the program committee, it's already chewed as hell. I mean, you don't have almost any more juice in that chewing gum.
That's basically done. That's adjustments. Yeah.
Exactly. So the participation in this project started by noticing that we needed to increase that participation. Now, when I say we develop those proposals and we participate in some, not in all. We try to incentivize and call the attention of the researchers to participate more in these projects, because they are not naturally inclined for that, of course, right? They are naturally inclined for the research-related projects. So participating in CSAs and tenders is a strategic maturity that not all organizations have.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Let's move into the blog, The Connection Home. And the reason why I put this is because there is always, no matter how you twist and turn it, no matter how you organize yourself out of it, there's always an issue with distance when you have a Brussels representation. It doesn't matter which kind of socioeconomic sector you're sitting there for. So the function here is for the Brussels ecosystem, but maybe also members of these kind of organizations, understanding the challenges that you sit with when you sit in your chair, Ricardo, trying to bind all the strings together and trying to make things work. So first of all, you have already been outlining a little bit about how you deal with this, but let us just now I put here in the rundown mapping what is needed. Is that something? Have you done that in the beginning of when you established the office? Did you sort of say, okay, we established this office because there was a motivation, right? So there would already at that stage have had some sort of strategy, or why you need that office. That's why you put it there in the first place, allocated resources. But did you also map the full, the institutes you have, and say, so these guys really need external funding. Here, there's a big potential within the EU where things are going. Or did you do that? Or how do you work with it?
Yeah, so I did, and it's an ongoing process. because for two reasons. First and foremost, because that work is difficult. It's not an easy work. So it takes time, and it takes and it has to be made by people who actually know what they're talking about. So it has to be done with the researchers themselves, right? Because otherwise it's worthless, right?
Yeah.
So I have had some very good experiences and some I'm not saying very bad, but some experience that didn't go so well. None of them were very bad because no one was fighting or anything. It was just that the results were not as deep and the dedication was not as heavy because that depends on so many factors. It depends on the personality of the people that you're working with. It depends on the time allocation, on their life circumstances, on what are they doing. If they are professors as well and they have classes, if they are just full-time researchers, if they, it depends on a huge amount of things. And so, yes, I have done that. I have done very deep characterizations and landscape analysis, both quantitative and qualitative, in some areas. Not all of the areas. I didn't get to all of the areas. I am changing the approach now and deepening that characterization into a more granular approach. So what I have found is this is my personal experience, and it might be contingent to different institutions and different environments. What I have found is if I try to do that in a large institution, in an area, in a major area, like let's say energy or health, as I mentioned them before, but we could say agriculture. Or we could say, because we work with all of them from the standpoint of digital technologies, we work with all of them. What ends up happening is that you get a high-level view. And then when you start trying to gather numbers, those numbers also give you a high-level view. And then when you start going into the nitty-gritty of the numbers and you start getting characterization of publications, of patents, of projects, and you even do like data mining processes for characterizing all of that, you understand that you need to go into a more granular level. So because INESC is built mainly as a matrix, so you have the vertical areas of application and I can't really call them horizontal, but they are more horizontal because they can be then used for application on the more fundamental research level. They can be used for application in several areas that might be very diverse, because someone working in AI or in computer science, advanced computing, might then have solutions or knowledge that is applicable to a vast number of sectors and knowledge domains. So you have to go into the concrete, and that's for two reasons: because of the quality of the information and to actually know your client, let's put it that way, KYC kind of thing, right? Yeah. Very, very well. But also because in the end, Niels, all of these are people, and exactly. you need to be if you look at numbers, you don't understand what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. You need to look at the numbers, you need to look at the characterizations, qualitative characterizations, but then you need to understand where those people want to go with that. And why sometimes you have areas where there are huge projects that people don't really want to follow up on that area. So you could say, yes, we're really good at X area. Right, I'm not going to name areas now because of
course not.
But I have some examples. But then concrete examples, but let's call them X and Y, right? So we're really good at X area because we have Z project, right? We have these tons of millions that we won in the last year or in the last couple of years or whatever in this area, in this specific domain, in this specific technology, with these specific partners. And then you go and speak to the guys that led those projects, and they say, "Yeah, but we're over that now. We're on to the next thing, and the next thing actually needs capabilities in this and this and this, and mobilize this and these guys, and needs to cross disciplinary work with that area, and needs to go in. So you have to go granular. You cannot do a proper job if you don't go granular in that sense."
Yeah. So now I understand very well because I've been sitting in a similar position, not for research organization, but I'm sitting in a similar position where making an impact needed to understand my stakeholders. And the only way to understand my stakeholders was to talk to them or visit them back home, or making activities or doing things to make sure I sort of got under the skin what was the core priorities of not just in relation to funding, but what are their worries and pains in relation to what they are doing as an organization. And how can I mirror that in Brussels? And it's not different within the research world, because what you're saying here is basically the same thing. You need to understand who they are. So research, you need to understand who they are, what they want, what is actually their pain, because two researchers within the same area can have two different pains. So understanding how is the dynamic in the research team is about what is, what are they actually very good at, and trying to mirror that on a strategic level in how you work in Brussels. That is the real challenge for.
No, but you see now the link with the implementation methodology that I've told you about. That's why I am more and more, and this has been a learning process, right? I'm more and more working with my management committee into a strategy that is both granular and project-based.
Yeah,
because this has been a learning process for everybody. Because sometimes, a few years ago, maybe people thought, "Yeah, we'll do this. We'll mobilize these guys or these girls or whoever that are or the heads of area or sector or unit or center or sometimes there are different designations across institutes, and then they will be able to you put them together, and they will be able to develop that. And then in the end, you get a high level perspective. But what we need now is to translate that into concrete match with European priorities, and in order to do that, you need to have a strategic vision. And you know very, very well that you cannot provide. I mean, we have a strategic vision for the organization and strategic areas. But when you say green and digital and whatever, that means very little for the researchers, right? So when you go and work with a team of researchers that work in specific areas of quantum technologies, or specific areas of telecommunications, or specific areas of precision agriculture, there you have granularity that will tell you, okay, so this will be able to be translated into a project. And when I mean a project, I don't mean a European project. It might be, okay, so now we know exactly what our characteristics are. We know exactly what the European priorities are. We know exactly where we sit there in terms of our capacities. and so we can translate that into different projects. Sometimes it's how we are going to influence a policy. Sometimes it's how we're going to build a successful project proposal and be the coordinators. Sometimes it's how are we going to build a strategic plan for that specific area. So that is the project I was talking about.
Are you this one where the strings meet in that process, or do you coordinate that with the one for the management team, the management board that you have established? How's that? How's the in all practicality? Huh? How much are you involved in that?
Yeah. I've learned a long time ago that you in science and technology, and I've had many roles in science and technology, from government to research. You do nothing that the people above you don't allow you to do.
Yeah.
So, because you can do it, but you do it once.
Yeah.
So
find something else to do. Someone has to pay your salary.
Yeah, or they just make your life hell. So yes, of course, I have. This is all articulated with the management committee or the policy and operations board member. And then it's articulated, or in parallel, not then, it's articulated with the leaders of that specific domain, research domain. And then it is transformed into a project that might have to mobilize more people or a diversity of people. It depends on what type of project it is and what type of goals we want to achieve, and what is the timeline and what are the resources that we can allocate. Right?
Yeah.
But that's why I found that, yes, the high-level characterization is needed, but a high-level characterization tells you very little if you do not work granularly. So that's one of the most valuable learnings I took from the process of implementation of activities at INESC Brussels Hub.
Yeah. So in all practicality, you agree with the management representative, and then you drive the process forward directly, communicating directly with the people in the team?
Yeah. In parts of the phase, in different phases, right? So I for example, give you an example. So we're doing that with a specific team. So I've had a meeting with the director of one of the institutes. That director said, so I think that because you have to consider, there are other considerations. The director of that institute, or the CEO, or the president, or the administrator, whatever you want to call it, has to consider, okay, I want to do this with that area, but imagine that he knows that the personality of those people or the maturity of thought of those people is not at the state of play that needs to be at the moment, or they are just not available. So the approach has to consider these things. And sometimes if we want to work with people with different maturity levels, of course, that we need to, as I said right at the beginning, to adapt the approach. So yeah, I spoke to the director and he identified the leaders of a group, a research group. We sat down with the leaders of that research group. We've defined the goals and what would be important for them to do. And we started with a project of characterization of capacity. We went on into a development of a strategy aligned, of a multi-level alignment strategy with the regional, national, and European priorities. And then there is also a framing that they want to do at a latter stage in terms of a more foresight related kind of almost visionary but very long term, trying to imagine the research in 20 years or 30 years in that area and try to kind of reverse engineer. So there are very different types of projects that come to my hands.
Sure.
And that is how you build capacity, because you bring the European priorities into that process. And by doing that, next time that something is being discussed, those guys are very, very, very qualified to be discussing those priorities and contributing to better align them. But it's a work that you do one step at a time.
Yeah. Do you participate in those meetings physically? Do you fly to Lisbon, or are you on video link, or how does that work?
No, it's a hybrid. When I mean hybrid, it's a hybrid of your answer. So I both fly and I both do video conferences, and I do video conferences. It really depends. Sometimes, let me give you an example. At the moment, I'm in Porto, right?
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. Tomorrow, I have a meeting with people in Porto, and I'm going to do a video conference because I have so many meetings back to back at that time that they want the meeting, that I said the only, when they are in different parts of, because INESC Tech has different parts of, it has parts here in Porto, it has other parts that are in the Polytechnic of Porto, and then it has other centers and units that are in Braga, the University of Minho, and other parts, Vila Real, in UTAD, the University of Trás-os-Montes. So there are different parts across the country. So I said, okay, I have so many meetings back to back that. So it's not because you're close that you don't do a video. It's a matter of efficiency, really.
Yeah. It's just that, you know what, you have a lot of meetings, Ricardo. Very full calendar. And if you could have the double up time, that would also be full.
That's one of the. That's one of. In your script, if I can ruin it a little bit,
sure.
You've asked the last question you've asked. I would say that's not the answer I'm going to give it. I'm going to give it to you because I thought about that. But when you ask what is the toughest challenge as a representative in Brussels, one of the toughest challenges is it's related with what I'm going to say, but it's that I have a full calendar. I am often not accepting meetings. So if I had double of the time, or if every day I had 48 hours, the calendar would still be full.
Exactly.
And that is something that you need to learn to manage.
Indeed.
It's one of the main challenges. And trust me, I have, for me, I think for everybody that is honest with him or herself, that is a challenge that at some point in your life, when you assume responsibilities that are heavy, you pass by that learning phase. And that's it's a tough but very, very rewarding phase.
We're not really. This is, you know what, all officers of your character, so characteristic, because what you could do, what you would be able to do in Brussels, if you have the available resources, if let's just say that you had 5 people with you, would be exponentially the effect you would have to if you are 1 to 3. because there's so much gained in Brussels from being present and being able to follow leads, be it influencing advocacy, be it proposals, be a network, long light connection with the institution, stuff like this. And this is what in TNU, I know that he'd been lobbied intensely internally in NTU, and then he finally got another person there because they realized slowly internally organization through his work that wait a minute, it actually makes, like we can get much more out of it if we just put one more person in there. And that's, I guess it's the same for you. Yeah, you say no to so many things, and you see the 360 degrees view of how much you're missing out on simply because of the constraint of resources and time.
So do you know I actually invited Massimo and Charlotte Andersdotter to our winter meeting, which was a very strategic meeting, and they were the only two external participants of the whole INESC system.
Yeah.
And it was a huge event in a very, very nice place in Porto. This time, the next one will be in Coimbra. And I invited Massimo and Charlotte, and I asked them to tell their story. What are their challenges? What do they do in Brussels? To our people, because I know we share challenges, and I know how difficult it is. Because I can't blame my own institutes for not investing more heavily, right? So, and this is already very, very good what they are doing, and it is a process of maturity. It is a process of building app capacity. So, yes, it would be exponential. The results would be exponential, because if I could allocate one person specifically for the needs in technology commercialization, that would make that task achievable, which at the moment I can't do by myself, right?
Of course not.
The way I think that also people have to think about those challenges is not just ask for more money, is to develop solutions while you don't have that money. So that's why I've spoken about this project-based approach, because these are solutions that will hopefully convince the people that are participating that when those resources are allocated, and those specialized resources are allocated, they are worth it. But you can't fast forward history. So you need to acknowledge what is the state of play. So I don't want to comment on other institutions, but in my institution, I know that the state of play needs to pass by this process.
It's very simple. It's a matter of maturing. It's a matter of realization, something opening up, and now you have a hub. So you have allocated. They have allocated resources because they see that is something that is important. External funding and the network in Brussels for the research organization. That's first step, and then as the more they see the added value, then they themselves, that's a matter of pain. When they see, we are stirring up a lot in the soup here, so a lot of meatballs are coming up on top because of Ricardo's work in Brussels. Maybe we should give him because we can see that it generates so much positive added value throughout the whole research organization here, things that would never have been accomplished without those leads there, here and there, dunk. Okay, but that takes realization of time, So.
That takes a lot of time, and it also takes alignment of concepts. once I participated in a research project that the core concept was governance. And the first work package in the first 3 months, because the project had engineers, architects, and social scientists, was to make sure that everybody was speaking the same language. Everybody understood what governance meant, because it meant something completely different for an architect than for an urban planner and for an economist or for a buildings engineer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you needed that, and that's the same thing about value added and about realization, and that also relates with internal culture. I mean, ask anyone who works for a university, when the rector team changes, what happens, right? So that culture and that value added and that notion needs to be built from the ground up. It cannot be built from the top down, because the top is hugely critical and important, but the people that make the organization, that bring all their energy and investment, personal investment into the activities they are putting, either research or support to research or innovation activities, those are the people that we need to work with in a more regular basis.
Yeah, and it's a mirror, right? Because you need to, the more you can lift the capacities of the individual researcher, or not, it will always be like this. You have some researchers that can juggle with international funding and like it and in their way of working, others not. But at least you lift the ones that can and want.
Yeah.
That's that. But it's vital, as you say, to make this this organizational structure with the management board around this, because management they take the decisions.
Listen,
so that mirror needs to be there, that they steer the direction, they take the strategic decisions, they accept that their research teams are doing this and how much they do it, and so on and so forth.
I'm a very, 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 very privileged person to have to be working with 5 amazing directors of institutions.
Sure.
Because, I mean, they have the courage, and before courage, I could have said the vision, but I mean, the courage already means the vision to do what they are doing. And this, you need courage to do that. You need courage to characterize yourself, to actually point where you need to be better.
Yeah.
Right?
Many managers won't do that.
No, the majority will not. And I mean, it's the difference between sophistry and teleology, right? So it's the difference between just doing things to show that you're great and doing things to be better and to contribute better.
Yeah.
Right? And at the same time get more resources out of that, because and benefit more people and within your organization and in society. So it's 2 different approaches, and our system and when I mean our system, I mean across Europe and the Western world in general, has not been in the last few decades promoting that type of thinking, more strategic, more with more abnegation, So why I'm very, very privileged in having these leaders that are truly they are leaders. They are not bosses. They are leaders. And
it sounds very Scandinavian.
You know that. When I was national delegate to several framework programs, it was quite amazing. In the themes that I represented Portugal, sometimes you articulated before with some of your colleagues, but many times you didn't. The Commission just put some things to vote, and sometimes it caught us by surprise. And when it caught us by surprise, can you imagine what was the number one country that always voted aligned with us in Portugal without prior discussion. No. It wasn't even a member of the EU. It was Norway.
Yeah.
But it was a Scandinavian anyway. So it could be Denmark, right?
It used to be Denmark.
Come on. Watch where you're going.
I always love to point it out. Sorry, my dear Norwegian listeners.
No, I love Norway, and very, very huge regards to Per Magnus at the Research Council of Norway and Solveig Flock and Oddvar Eriksen and all those guys. I really liked and enjoyed the work I had with them.
The dedication that the Norwegian research and innovation system has to the EU, it's incredible.
But they also debated a lot. One of the things I was there doing, and I've discussed it with them, is that they discuss every time they discuss if it is useful to have to be member and to invest in Horizon Europe. It is an honest discussion they have, and I think that is very good that they have that discussion. And more people should have that discussion so that you understand why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah.
No, Ricardo, I need to keep an eye on time here because we're slowly. It's a very nice conversation, but I just need to see how we're going to.
And here I will be fading out of this first half of this conversation with Ricardo. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Grand. All the Grand episodes have their own site on the Grand website. You will find the link in the episode notes where you listen to your podcast. On the site for this episode, you'll find a link to Ricardo's personal LinkedIn site and to INESC. Further, there will be a link to more episodes under the Grand, the Brussels office. Next up is the second half, where we zoom in on lobbying and R&D facilitation. See you next week.